the Democratic side seems to be almost strengthened NAFTA, although it's not a real popular document. It's not a real popular thing. What do we do about NAFTA?
Well, I think for a state like Arizona and states that are on the border and depend so heavily on trade with Mexico and Latin America in general as that expands, that I think that NAFTA continues to be politically, and I was opposed to it when it came in. I think strengthening the three-nation trade agreements is important. I think aspects of NAFTA that have not helped the borderlands, and particularly the maquiladora industry that fled for cheaper labor in Southeast Asia and left many people on that border urging, and they became economic refugees coming to this country, that there are things about NAFTA that have to have a deriving benefit not only for the receiving nation, but the sending nation and vice versa. I don't think we're there yet. I don't think that, and for us to cling to NAFTA as the blueprint for everything we need to do in terms of trade, I think is a mistake. I think all the candidates are saying that we have to relook at trade. All the candidates are opposed to TPP. And NAFTA being held up as the ultimate example of what could be a good trade agreement leaves a lot to be desired.
So what do we replace it with? You say TPP isn't the answer. And Donald Trump talks a lot about the trade deficit that we have with Mexico, which he sees as damaging.
Well, I don't think that's factually correct. I think that the trade deficit that he speaks to, there's also there's also $1.5 billion in sales tax that comes to the state from visitors and shoppers. I think the produce industry, particularly in Arizona, is a huge contributor to the whole country. And 200, 300,000 jobs that depend on trade in Arizona are not something to laugh at. And so when you derive a deficit question, you also have to derive the benefit side, which in terms of employment and tax revenue is tilted entirely in the favor of the United States and in particular Arizona. What do we need to do? I think we need to strengthen those bilateral agreements, those bilateral relationships in terms of economic development and trade, and NAFTA is a blueprint, I think is one thing, but NAFTA is the only guiding instrument by which we reach bilateral, binational agreements on trade and exchanges and commerce. I think the United States should pursue those as aggressively as it's pursuing defending NAFTA.
When it comes to, I mean, let's just moderate Donald Trump's point for a moment here. The trade deficit that he talks about is obviously valuable to Mexico. Mexico is our biggest trading partner, and I suspect we're their biggest trading partner as well. Can't that be used as leverage in terms of border security?
Well, it depends what you mean by border security. I think that the leverage that we have economically with the country of Mexico gets squandered when all we talk about is enforcement, security, threat, invasions, and use those kinds of parameters to talk about a trading partner and more importantly, for the border regions and states like Arizona, part and parcel of the history of this whole region. And so I think rhetoric does count, tone does count, content does count, and so if you want to develop a relationship in which security is the primary issue that you want to deal with, I think mixing apples and oranges and saying incumbent on you is to do something about security or there will be an economic consequence to you if you don't, I don't think that's a strategy that's going to work, and it's a strategy that's going to be rejected.
You were the first congressman to support Bernie Sanders a couple of weeks ago. You flipped that support around. You say you're now backing Hillary Clinton. Why the change, and are you trying to send a message to Bernie Sanders to drop out or fade in the background here a little bit and try to unite the Democratic Party?
No, I think when I said I would support Hillary Clinton, and I am, I said I'm prepared to go arm in arm and make sure that she wins and Trump loses. There's no question about that. But I think also what I've said is that what Bernie Sanders did in this campaign, I'm very proud of, and I continue to be one of his delegates, and I continue to be somebody that feels that the platform has to reflect what we experienced in that campaign, and that it's incumbent both on the presumptive nominee, Hillary Clinton, and the DNC and its leadership, the Democratic National Committee, to integrate and fully respect 46% of the electorate in the primary. and 1,800 delegates that will be there for Bernie, that are pledged to Bernie. When you talk about economic issues, when you talk about climate change, you know, there is a big swath of center-left Democrats that express themselves, and particularly the young, whose aspirations for the future may be different from other generations. They need to be heard. And it's not more than heard, fully integrated. Because if our party is going to meld this insurgent campaign of Bernie's into the future, it begins with this convention, and it begins with adopting and accepting as part of the general platform of the party some of the basic tenets that Bernie ran on.
Some people compare the Bernie Sanders supporters to the Trump supporters, disenfranchised, just on the other side of the political aisle here. Are you concerned that a lot of those Sanders supporters are not going to vote for Hillary Clinton, or just stay out of the race entirely, or, crazy as it sounds, even vote for Donald Trump?
Well, there was a survey that came out of Bernie supporters, people that voted for him in the primary poll that was done, and 10% of those said they were voting for Donald Trump. 70% said they were voting for Hillary, and the rest not quite sure what they're going to do. The point I'm making is that I think the vast majority are going to support Hillary. And I think to make the equation, I think there was I think the angst and the anxiety and the sense of not quite knowing what the future is going to be, you can make that parallel. But I think then the solutions to that parallel are completely different. And I think that's the key point. For Bernie, it wasn't about us versus them. And it wasn't about, it was about diversity. It was about economic opportunity and issues as important as racial justice and climate change, which are diametrically opposed to where the rhetoric is coming from Trump. So I think at the end of the day, with voters in this country, you know, we just had the referendum in the UK. Well, there's a referendum coming in this country as well in November.